It was on this fateful day that the legendary abolitionist John Brown took his last breath after fighting so long on the cruel battlefields of racism.
The abolitionist movement was a milestone in 19th century American history. Not only did this era attempt to emancipate a system so deeply embedded in our roots, it fostered a new generation of fighters. Militants who sacrificed themselves not only for a country, but for humanity itself. Although these fighters defied racial conformities, a particular man stood above them all, bearing the name of John Brown. John Brown lived as a white man fighting for black rights during a time of racial transgression, exploring civil rights and exchanging ideas about these rights with other abolitionists and the Underground Railroad. Brown concluded that violence was necessary to effectuate his goal, encountering dissent from both the North and the South, and providing the fuel for the Civil War. John Brown was born on May 9, 1800, in the small city of Torrington, Connecticut. Even at an early age, his parents influenced Brown's values and mindset greatly. They taught him the importance of the Bible, the presence of God, as well as strong aberration towards slavery, shaping the beginnings of his anti-slavery profession. Brown redirected his vision towards the principles of life while uncovering financial problems. His interest in the oppressed sparked his beginnings as an abolitionist. Brown moved to Kansas in 1855 after an early expedition freeing slaves. There, he became the leader of the anti-slavery forces of Pottawatomie Creek. Inspired by pro-slavery guerrillas, had 6 accomplices murder 5 important slave supporters residing in Kansas, justifying his actions as the will of God. By 1858, Brown had managed to gather a band of other radical abolitionists, whom he led on the journey to explore civil rights. On October 16, 1859, John Brown made a decision that changed the face of the abolitionist movement. He and a group of 18 men took the treacherous journey to Harper's Ferry, Virginia. They were supplied with these weapons by the Secret Six, a spy group who worked as the primary supporters of John Brown. The raid of the United Armory and Arsenal at Harper's Ferry ended as a success in the field of civil rights. His actions called for national attention and encouraged others to explore the world of civil rights along with him. John Brown contributed to the Underground Railroad for a long period of time, exchanging ideas about civil rights with them. The Underground Railroad's purpose was to give African Americans an escape route so they could flee to the South when required. John Brown's role in the system was to fend for the African Americans and protect them from any harm. Throughout his years of working in the Underground Railroad, John Brown interacted with African Americans escaping enslavement and conversed with them to learn more about their situation. His exchange of ideas with this disadvantaged group of people increased his significance in the abolitionist movement and spreading his ideals. John Brown and his allies created the League of Gileadites on January 15, 1851. This, similar to the Underground Railroad, was an organization that protected escaped slaves from slave catchers. The League of Gileadites was based on the work of God and was signed by 44 people. By exchanging his views regarding civil rights with other organizations, Brown was able to effectively round up support mainly in the North and sparked even more dissent in the South.
The small town of Lawrence was ransacked on May 21, 1856, by pro-slavery groups who hoped to target this purely abolitionist town. About 800 people from Kansas and Missouri rode into the town for the purpose of arresting members of this free slave government. In order to prevent further disruption in the town, the citizens of Lawrence agreed to surrender to the gang's demands. After the sacking of Lawrence, Kansas, John Brown vowed revenge. On the night of May 24th, John Brown and 7 others set out for the pro-slavery town of Pottawatomie Creek under the alias Army of the North. They ransacked homes and ripped their occupants from them, using knives, rifles, and broadswords to mercilessly kill 5 of the victims. Brown and his supporters are pursued until the end of that summer. At this point, Brown was labeled a fugitive, yet still welcomed by the abolitionists in the North as a hero. After John Brown's failure at Harper's Ferry raid of 1859, He was captured in an engine house where he and his men had been taking refuge over the course of the event. Following the raid of Harper's Ferry, John Brown and his fellow prisoners were transported to Charlestown. There he was convicted of treason against Virginia, on account of both murder and encouraging slaves to rebel. Upon hearing these charges, Brown declared himself not guilty. Nevertheless, the judge set the official trial date to October 26, 1859. On the day of his trial, over 600 spectators came to watch the defendant receive his fate. The injured John Brown lay on his cot, pleading not guilty, and after the long court battle where they encountered many outcries against John Brown's violence, it was decided that Brown would be ruled guilty.
I am only walking as God foreordained I should walk. All my actions, even the follies leading to this disaster, were decreed to happen long ages before this world began. But I cannot remember a night so dark as to have hindered the coming day, or a storm so furious as to prevent the return of warm sunshine and the country at peace. I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land can never be purged away but with blood. I let them hang me. I forgive them, and may God forgive them, for they know not what they do.
John Brown was hung on December 2nd. The radical militant John Brown explored civil rights through a multitude of endeavors, most famously the raid of Harper's Ferry, in the process of murdering any slave supporters that he came across. He lived to be one of the first explorers of civil rights in America, specifically advocating anti-slavery ideas. What was even more astounding was the fact that Brown broke the boundaries of color, since he was a white man fighting for black rights. He exchanged his ideas about the abolition of slavery with organizations, such as the Underground Railroad. Through this exchange, he was able to spread these controversial ideas and arouse about anti-slavery supporters. Along his journey of attaining a slave-free nation, Brown encountered dissent and persecution due to his anti-slavery ideas and violent methods of achieving his goals. To this date, John Brown remains not only an important figure in history, but also a great question of morality.
If you think it is wrong to use violence to achieve your goals, then he's a villain. If you think what his goal, human equality for blacks and abolishing slavery, was noble, then you may think he's a hero. Or you can be like Lincoln and try to have it both ways. We agree that his goal was noble, but we don't like his methods.
With his decisive actions, John Brown was a major leader of the abolitionist movement. Brown served as an influence to our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, through his attempts to halt slavery in the United States. Because he acted so rashly, Brown gained himself both enemies and supporters, earning himself a place in history as a highly flawed hero. John Brown raised awareness of anti-slavery ideas with his actions towards exploring civil rights, further dividing the North and the South. John Brown's bold actions fueled the Civil War, which soon became the deadliest war in American history, totaling at 625,000 fatalities. However, these downfalls came with great benefits, including the abolition of slavery. The conclusion of the Civil War strengthened the national government's federalism, allowed industrialism to flourish due to wartime production and technological development, and most importantly, united the United States of America once again. In conclusion, John Brown, a white man who fought for black rights during a time of racial transgression, explored civil rights and exchanged ideas about these rights with other abolitionists and the Underground Railroad. His conclusion that violence was necessary to effectuate his goal caused him to encounter dissent from both the North and the South and provided fuel for the Civil War, leading to the America we know today. Although he had his flaws, John Brown's exchanges, explorations, and encounters changed the face of civil rights, leading to the ideals Americans have today.